They say blood is thicker than water, but sometimes family can be the most toxic substance in your life. I learned that lesson the hard way when my brother chose a con artist over his own nephew, setting off a chain of events that would expose a $1 million wedding scam and tear our family apart. I'm Rebecca Mitchell, single mother to 12-year-old Lucas, and until 6 months ago, I thought I knew my younger brother Jack better than anyone. We'd been close since childhood, bonding over our shared love of music and our dreams of making it in the entertainment industry. While I eventually settled into a stable career as a music teacher to provide for Lucas, Jack chased his dreams to Los Angeles, determined to become a music producer. Lucas had always been Jack's biggest fan. Despite being on the autism spectrum, my son connected with people through music in a way that amazed everyone who knew him. He could hear patterns in melodies that others missed, remember entire compositions after a single listen, and play them back perfectly on his keyboard. "Uncle Jack's going to make you famous one day, buddy," Jack would tell Lucas during his visits, watching my son work out complex chord progressions. "We'll write songs together." That all changed when Jack met Isabella Romano 6 months ago. She swept into his life like a hurricane in designer heels, all perfect makeup and practiced charm. Her story seemed like a fairy tale: Italian aristocracy, private schools in Switzerland, connections to the biggest names in the entertainment industry. "She's going to change everything, Becca," Jack gushed during one of our weekly video calls. "Our family's investing in my studio. We're talking millions in equipment, top-tier artists, everything I've dreamed of." I should have seen the red flags. The way she tensed when Lucas interrupted their visits with his excited talk about music theory. The subtle grimaces when he got overwhelmed and needed to stim. The constant redirecting of conversations back to her family's wealth and connections. But Jack was so happy, so convinced he finally found his path to success, that I ignored my instincts. Even when they announced their engagement after just 2 months of dating, I tried to be supportive. "We're planning the wedding of the century," Isabella announced during a family dinner. The Romano family name demands nothing less than perfection. Jack's studio investors will all be there, celebrities, producers, everyone who's anyone in the industry. The wedding plans quickly spiraled into something out of a luxury magazine. A historic castle venue in the Italian countryside, private jets for selected guests, Michelin-starred catering, every detail designed to showcase the Romano family's supposed wealth and influence. Lucas was ecstatic about being the ring bearer. He practiced walking in a straight line, holding the pillow just right, timing his steps to the wedding march. Jack had even promised to let him play keyboard during the cocktail hour, a dream come true for my music-loving son. Then came the phone call that changed everything. About Lucas, Isabella's voice dripped with fake sympathy. "We've been thinking, a wedding of this caliber needs to be absolutely perfect. With his condition, perhaps it would be better if he didn't participate." My blood ran cold. "What exactly are you saying?" "Children with special needs can be unpredictable," she continued smoothly. "The investors attending are very particular about appearances. We can't risk any disruptions." "He's your nephew," I protested. "Jack promised him." "Jack agrees with me," she cut in. "He understands what's at stake here. We'll send Lucas a special gift to make up for it." I waited for my brother to call, to explain, to stand up for his nephew. The call never came. Instead, I received a formal email disinviting Lucas from the wedding, with a note suggesting I find appropriate care for him during the event. Something snapped inside me. The sister who'd always supported Jack's dreams disappeared, replaced by a mother determined to protect her child from people who saw him as an embarrassment. I started digging, first into Isabella's background, then into the wedding financing, and finally into the supposed studio investors. As a single mom, I learned to be thorough about protecting my family's interests. What I discovered made my blood run cold. Isabella Romano wasn't Italian aristocracy. According to my private investigator, her real name was Isabel Ramirez, and she had a history of elaborate investment scams across 3 states. The castle venue, secured with fake bank documents; the studio investors, hired actors playing roles in an elaborate scheme to convince wealthy wedding guests to invest in Jack's non-existent production company. The whole wedding was a con, designed to separate gullible socialites from their money, and my brother, whether knowingly or through willful ignorance, was helping her do it. I gathered evidence meticulously: bank records, background checks, statements from Isabella's previous victims. One of her former marks, a Texas oil executive, was particularly helpful once I explained the situation. She pulled the same scam in Houston, he confirmed, sending me documents from his fraud case against her. Claimed to be Brazilian oil money that time. Took me for $500,000 before I caught on. The wedding was scheduled for next Saturday at a supposedly historic castle outside Rome. 300 guests, including dozens of potential investors for Jack's studio, would be flying in from around the world. Isabella had arranged everything through her family's private travel company, which, according to my investigation, was just another shell corporation in her web of fraud. I sat in my home office late one night watching Lucas practice a new piece on his keyboard, the same song he planned to play at his uncle's wedding. My sweet, talented boy deemed too disruptive for their perfect scam. "Mom," he called out, fingers still moving over the keys. "Why doesn't Uncle Jack want me at his wedding? Did I do something wrong?" My heart broke. "No, baby. You didn't do anything wrong. Sometimes adults make bad choices because they're focused on the wrong things." The next morning, I made 3 phone calls, one to the FBI's Financial Crimes Division, one to the Italian police, and one to my lawyer. Then I booked 2 tickets to Rome. Isabella had banned my son from her fake perfect wedding. Fine. We'd attend anyway. And I'd bring a very special wedding gift, the truth that would expose their entire charade. The pieces were in place. The evidence was secured. And in 1 week, I would remind my brother what really matters in life, even if it meant destroying the fairy tale he'd chosen to believe in. Sometimes the best wedding gifts aren't found on any registry. Sometimes they come in the form of hard truths and consequences. The Italian countryside was beautiful in June, all rolling hills and ancient stone buildings bathed in golden light. The historic castle Isabella had chosen for her wedding was actually a recently renovated villa, carefully staged to look like old money for the benefit of potential marks. Lucas and I checked into a small hotel in the nearby village 2 days before the wedding. I'd arranged everything through my own travel agent, avoiding Isabella's fraudulent booking service. My son was fascinated by the medieval architecture, rattling off facts about Gothic arches and flying buttresses as we explored the town. "Mom," he said during dinner at a local trattoria, his fork pausing over his pasta, "are we going to get in trouble for going to the wedding when we weren't invited?" I reached across the table and squeezed his hand. "No, sweetheart. We're going to stop other people from getting hurt. Sometimes being uninvited is less important than doing what's right." The day before the wedding, I met privately with Inspector Marco Rossi of the Italian Financial Crimes Unit. In his office overlooking the Tuscan hills, I laid out everything I'd discovered about Isabella's scam. "She's done this before," I explained, spreading out documents across his desk. "Different names, different backstories, but always the same scheme. She finds someone with entertainment industry connections, creates elaborate fake events to impress wealthy marks, then disappears with their investment money." The inspector studied the evidence carefully. "And your brother? He's involved in this fraud?" "I don't know," I admitted. "That's partly why I'm here. I need to understand if he's a willing participant or another victim." Rossi nodded thoughtfully. "We will have officers in place tomorrow, dressed as service staff. When you give the signal, we move." The wedding day dawned clear and perfect. From our hotel window, I watched luxury cars wind their way up to the villa. Lucas sat at the small desk, practicing finger exercises on a silent keyboard. "I wish I could still play at the wedding," he said quietly. "I practiced the piece for 2 months. I helped him with his tie, making sure his suit was perfect." "I know, baby, but today you're going to do something even more important. You're going to help show Uncle Jack what really matters." We arrived at the villa just as guests were being seated for the ceremony. Isabella had hired security to check invitations, but I prepared for that. A quick call to Inspector Rossi, and suddenly the guards were very interested in a situation at the back entrance. The ceremony space was a masterpiece of deception, everything designed to project old-world wealth and sophistication. I recognized several faces from my research: wealthy investors, industry executives, all carefully cultivated marks for Isabella's scam. Jack stood at the altar, handsome in his tuxedo but noticeably tense. Our eyes met across the rows of flowers and guests. His face went pale when he saw Lucas beside me. But before he could react, the wedding march began. Isabella floated down the aisle in a designer gown that probably hadn't been paid for. She was so focused on her performance that she didn't notice us until she reached the altar. When she did, her mask slipped for just a second, a flash of rage quickly covered by her practiced smile. I let the ceremony proceed, watching Jack promise his life to a woman who'd built their relationship on lies. When the officiant asked if anyone had reason to object, I stayed silent. This wasn't about stopping a wedding. It was about exposing the truth. The reception was held in the villa's grand ballroom. As guests sipped champagne and nibbled canapés, Isabella worked the room with practiced charm. I watched her lay the groundwork for her scam, mentioning investment opportunities, dropping hints about guaranteed returns, drawing people into her web. Lucas tugged at my sleeve. "Uncle Jack is coming." My brother approached us slowly, conflict clear on his face. "Becca, you shouldn't be here." "And Lucas, Isabella was clear about not wanting your nephew at your wedding." I finished. Yes, she was very clear about how his autism might disrupt her perfect scam. Jack's face hardened. "You don't understand. This is about my future, my career. Isabella's family isn't Italian, isn't wealthy, and isn't investing in anything except their own bank accounts." I pulled out my phone and showed him the evidence I'd gathered. Her real name is Isabel Ramirez. This entire wedding is a con to scam your guests. He stared at the documents, face growing paler. "No, there must be some mistake. The studio plans, the investors, are all fake, just like her accent, her family background, and every promise she's made you." I touched his arm gently. "The question is, Jack, did you know? Are you part of this scam, or just another victim?" Before he could answer, Isabella's voice rang out across the ballroom. "Everyone, if I could have your attention, please." She stood on a small stage where Lucas should have been playing his keyboard. "My wonderful new family has prepared a special presentation about the exciting investment opportunities we discussed." That was my cue. I nodded to Inspector Rossi, who was disguised as a waiter near the stage. He spoke quietly into his radio, and suddenly the ballroom doors opened to admit a dozen Italian police officers. "Isabel Romano, or should I say Isabel Ramirez," Rossi announced in clear English. "You are under arrest for multiple counts of fraud, identity theft, and conspiracy to commit wire fraud." The chaos that followed was both terrible and satisfying. Isabella tried to run but was quickly apprehended. Her fake accent disappeared as she screamed about her rights. Guests murmured in confusion and growing anger as police officers explained the situation. Jack stood frozen, watching his fairy tale collapse around him. "I didn't know," he whispered. "I suspected something wasn't right, but I wanted so badly to believe." "Did you really agree to ban Lucas from your wedding?" I asked quietly, "or was that her idea too?" He closed his eyes, tears streaming down his face. "She said the investors wouldn't understand, that it would ruin everything. I was so focused on the studio dreams that oh God, what have I done?" Lucas, who had been quietly watching everything unfold, suddenly walked to the abandoned keyboard on stage. Before anyone could stop him, he began to play, not the simple piece he practiced for the wedding, but an improvised melody that somehow captured all the emotion and chaos of the moment. The room gradually fell silent as his music filled the space. Police paused in their duties, guests stopped their angry muttering, and everyone turned to watch the boy who had been deemed too disruptive to attend. Jack walked slowly to the stage, listening to his nephew play with fresh ears. When Lucas finished, the room burst into applause. Real applause, not the polite social kind that Isabella had orchestrated. "I'm so sorry, buddy," Jack said, voice breaking. "I forgot what really matters. Can you ever forgive your stupid uncle?" Lucas considered this with his usual directness. "You hurt me," he said simply. "But Mom says sometimes people make bad choices when they're focused on the wrong things. Are you focused on the right things now?" Jack pulled him into a hug, sobbing. "I'm trying to be." The aftermath was messy but necessary. Isabella and several accomplices were arrested. Many guests were angry about being targeted for fraud, but others were grateful the scam had been exposed before they invested. The FBI investigation revealed that Jack hadn't been directly involved in the fraud, though he had ignored obvious red flags. He would face some legal consequences for his role, but his cooperation with authorities helped mitigate the damage. 2 months later, I sat in my living room watching Lucas give Jack his first real piano lesson. My brother had sold everything from his life in LA and moved back home, determined to rebuild his life on a foundation of truth rather than illusions. "You could have exposed her without coming to Italy," Jack said later that evening, "without bringing Lucas into it. Why did you do it this way?" I sipped my tea thoughtfully. "Because you needed to see what you almost threw away. Success means nothing if you sacrifice the people who truly love you to achieve it." He nodded, watching Lucas practice a new piece in the next room. "I keep thinking about what would have happened if you hadn't stopped it. How many people she would have hurt. How I would have lived with myself once I finally figured it out." "That's not what Lucas thinks about," I said. "He just remembers that when people tried to exclude him, his mom stood up for him. That's the lesson he learned from all this." Jack was quiet for a moment. "What do you think about opening a small music school together? Nothing fancy, no fake investors or grand schemes. Just us, teaching kids like Lucas to love music." I smiled, remembering our childhood dreams of making it in the music industry. Maybe we had made it, just not in the way we'd imagined. "I think," I said, watching my son's fingers dance across the keys, "that sometimes the smallest stages offer the biggest opportunities to do what's right." Lucas's music filled the house, pure and honest and real. No fake accents, no elaborate cons, no perfect facades. Just a boy who loved music, an uncle learning to see true value, and a mother who knew that sometimes the best revenge isn't exposure or punishment, but simply showing people what they almost lost. The wedding gifts had been returned, the fake castle forgotten, the dreams of instant music industry success abandoned. But we had gained something more valuable. A second chance to be the family we were meant to be, built on truth and acceptance rather than lies and exclusion. Sometimes the most beautiful melodies come from the songs we didn't plan to play.